Good evening, and welcome to tonight's small group organ. Organ we see all the time in church. Every Sunday we see it. Maybe don't think much about it. Look at our organ. Look at various organs throughout other churches as well. And we probably don't think much about it except for the sound it makes and the music it makes if your church uses an organ. So we're going to dive a little deeper into it. You heard Chuck Knows Church. There's not a ton of stuff with organ. As we found out when I did a search. However, we definitely have some links that you can go to that will actually let you hear and see a bunch of different beautiful organs and the sounds they make, which has become traditional or synonymous with the church setting, having a pipe organ of some kind and pipes hanging in the sanctuary of the church. Well, I did do a search for organ on the United Methodist website and the Greater New Jersey Conference. Heck, even with Google, many things came up besides the musical instrument, the organ. Organ donation. Feelings of organ donation and how people feel about that as far as the Methodist faith goes, in general, ways it can be done. Seeking an organist. That seems to be a popular thing as well. We need organists. Apparently the organists are in short supply and we need them because there is a ton of different help wanted ads, so to speak, on the Methodist websites for getting organists to be able to play. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more in this section, is a contemporary service versus traditional. There was an article written by Reverend Womack that discuss the differences between traditional and contemporary, and what truly is a contemporary service. After reading it, I found out I wasn't 100% on understanding exactly what it was. I had half a clue, but if you dive deeper into it, a lot more of our churches that say, hey, we're doing a traditional or a traditional service, are actually doing a contemporary service, technically, the way the definition goes and the way it's looked at. So contemporary is a wide, very, very broad range of things. Traditional is basically the way we've always done it, the way it's been done forever, using the paper Bible, using the paper hymnal, having that and only using that, having the organ playing, strict, very serious tones, not a lot of flashiness. So kind of the way it's always been done in the past, from going back to the origins of the church, and trying to keep with those traditions of how things were done and not really changing at all. Contemporary, despite what a lot of people think, praise music, it's got to be praise music, and I know some congregations, including ours, not a fan of that. Praise music doesn't make you a contemporary service. That's just one thing that could make you a little bit more contemporary or a little bit more modernized. Anything that you change from the original type of service could be considered contemporary. You do it your own way. It's almost like a burger joint. Have it your way, hamburger. Except we're just changing the service. Now, we're not necessarily getting away from the service itself, but we're doing it in different ways. We're adding electronics. Now, electronics aren't a bad thing. In a lot of cases, they enhance the service and make it better. For those that can't see well, having words on a screen. For those that can't fiddle through and get to the song in a reasonable amount of time before they start playing it, this stuff is on the screen. In our own personal instances, having kids, babysitting, or having your own kids and you're holding them, feeding them, trying to keep them occupied, it's tough to do all that with a hymnal in your hand and opening that as well. You can look up at the words and sing. So again, it's not a bad thing, and it's not necessarily making it, taking it away from using the Bible or the hymnal. However, it's making it more convenient for the churchgoers and making things a little bit easier. So changing things in any way can make it a contemporary service. You're doing it your own way. A little bit different from the origins of when services started. So contemporary has a very, very broad meaning. It could mean a lot of different changes that you have to the service. And again, not changing the service from getting away from the Bible or the hymnal or singing, but doing the service itself in a different way. Again, electronics have become a big thing, and again, you can't take away everything traditional and just go electronics, because A, electronics fail. B, if you're like me, unless you're going to put the notes up there too, you got to listen to everybody else to carry the tune, and those people usually are using the hymnals. So the best way, and actually contemporary is probably the better way to have a service these days, because you're reaching out to all the different people and the way their opinions, the way they like to have the service. So by having the electronics there, some are going to be tuned in more towards that, but keeping the hymnals and the paper Bibles and all are going to appeal to others. So the more ways you can entice or engage the congregation and their likes, you can potentially get more people in the church as well. So it's not about going contemporary and going completely modern. It's changing it up to suit the time era. And again, not taking away from God. And I think that's the most important part is I'm pretty sure that God doesn't matter how we're or that we're changing things from the traditional origins of the initial church service, as long as we're not taking God out of the service, as long as the goal and the center and the focus is God. Here's a bunch of pictures of a ton of different styles of organs. Just like the different types of contemporary services, we can have a bunch of different ones out there. There are a bunch of different organs out there, all from the antique, the ones that probably a lot of us picture in the churches, the older churches, the pipes, the antique type look, to the older knob stops that Chuck was talking about, to all the different push buttons. It almost looks like a computer screen or a computer keyboard with all these different buttons as to what they do and change. So there's a bunch of different types out there, from the simplistic to the fancy, and everything in between. Like I said, there wasn't a lot on organs, but more on that contemporary versus traditional, which I thought was kind of neat. And one of the things that a lot of people think about with contemporary is getting rid of the organ, getting rid of the Bibles and paper hymnals, getting away from piano, going more towards guitars and stuff like that. Again, does not mean that. It just means that you're changing from the original service back in the when the church was first created, not necessarily going all modernized. I think, and just personal opinion, I think like everything else, there's a balance in life, and having a balance between the two will make for a better service for more of the people in the congregation. So we have the traditional versus contemporary. What is a contemporary service? Link from Reverend Womack. So feel free to read that entire article. It's a really good article. It has a lot of different stuff in it. We're also going to have next 2 videos that we're going to play showing some of the different types of organs and a how it's made pipe organ video. So stay tuned. Look for those links on the Facebook site, and we'll be playing them in person shortly. Thanks, and have a good night.